Okay, so student loans. It feels like everyone's got an opinion on them, but nobody really wants to explain what's going on.
Yeah, it's a bit of a minefield, right?
Totally. And we're talking about a lot of money here, like trillions,
$1.6 trillion dollars, to be exact. At least that's what this report on the student loan crisis says.
which is exactly why we're doing a deep dive on this whole thing. Got to make sense of it all, right?
Exactly. Think of it like we've read the report, so you don't have to. And we're going to break it down into, plain English.
Exactly. No more economic jargon, just the facts and what they might mean for you.
Right, because at the end of the day, it's about whether this whole student loan thing is actually a crisis or just, something we're all kind of worried about.
Right. So let's jump right in. And I think the first place we got to start is the cost of college itself. Am I crazy or has it gotten totally out of control?
Not crazy at all.
Yeah.
This report says tuition costs have been going up way faster than, well, pretty much everything else. Inflation, wages, you name it.
Okay, so that's not good. And the report actually uses the phrase debt bubble, which sounds kind of scary.
Yeah, it's basically economists speak for things are seriously unbalanced. And they're saying that's what we're headed for if things don't change.
Okay, so debt bubble, unbalanced. What does that actually mean for like a regular person? I've got this friend, right? Landed their dream job, the whole 9 yards. But they can't even think about getting a place because their loan payments are insane.
And that's the thing about this whole crisis. It's not just numbers on a spreadsheet. It's your friend putting off their dreams. It's millions of people delaying huge life milestones.
Right, because who can buy a house or start a family when you're drowning in debt?
Exactly. And it goes even further than that. Less people buying houses, that impacts the housing market. Fewer people investing and spending. That can actually drag down the entire economy,
So wait, it's not just a personal finance nightmare, it's messing with the whole system.
like a domino effect.
Yeah.
And that's what this report really drives home. Student loan debt, it's not just an individual problem, it's a weight on everyone's shoulders,
Hmm.
even if they never went to college themselves.
Okay, so we're all stuck in this giant debt bubble and nobody's having a good time. But how did we even get here? Why is college so expensive in the first place?
Well, it's not just one thing, unfortunately. This report points to a few key culprits, and honestly, it's kind of a perfect storm of all of them together.
Okay, well, let's try to untangle them. What's the first one they call out?
So one of the biggest drivers is actually something that's been decreasing: public funding for higher ed.
Wait, hold on. Less money from the government is making college more expensive? How does that even work?
I know, right? Sounds kind of backward. But think of it this way. Imagine you're a university and suddenly you're getting way less money from, the state or the feds.
Okay, yeah.
Still got to pay your staff, maintain buildings, offer classes, all that stuff. So where's that money going to come from?
Students. Higher tuition.
Bingo.
Yeah.
And this report actually puts some numbers on it. Over the past 2 decades, get this, state funding for public universities has dropped by an average of 16%, adjusted for inflation even.
16%. That's wild.
It's huge.
Okay, so it's not just about government funding, though, right? This report also looked into how universities are spending their money, and I'm guessing it's not all on textbooks and like lab equipment.
You got that right. I mean, some of it definitely goes to important stuff like, faculty salaries, academic resources,
Right.
the things you need for a good education.
Yeah.
But this report highlights another trend that's kind of interesting. It's this rise of what they call lifestyle amenities.
Lifestyle amenities. Okay, you're gonna have to explain that one. What are we talking about here? Like underwater treadmills in the dorms.
Not quite that fancy, but you're getting the idea. Think like state-of-the-art gyms, climbing walls, those super nice dorms.
Hmm.
Some campuses even have lazy rivers.
Seriously? Lazy rivers.
It's a thing. But the point is, these things are designed to attract students, right? But they also cost a fortune to build and maintain.
So it's like an arms race. Every university trying to like one up the others with fancier and fancier perks. And then students end up footing the bill for it all.
Exactly. And then on top of all that, there's this whole other issue of what they call administrative bloat. Basically, the report found that administrative positions at these schools, they've been growing way faster than tenured faculty positions.
So more admins, more staff, more people to pay, which means even higher tuition.
Yep. It all adds up.
Yeah.
And then, of course, we can't talk about college costs without mentioning,
Yeah.
faculty salaries and benefits.
Oh, yeah. The whole overpaid professor debate. But I'm guessing it's not as simple as some people make it seem.
Not at all. It's super complicated, actually. I mean, yeah, at the very top, especially at those elite private schools, salaries can be really high.
Mm.
But this report actually broke down how much professors earn at different types of institutions with different levels of experience, all that. And it's not just about those few professors making headlines. There are a lot of things that influence how much they get paid, like tenure status, their field of study, whether it's a public or private school. It's complicated.
So lots of layers to that one. Okay, so let me get this straight. We've got shrinking public funding, universities spending big on fancy perks and administration, and then the whole faculty compensation thing. It's no wonder tuition is through the roof. All right, so we've got this pressure cooker of like shrinking funds, rising costs, and everyone pointing fingers. What now? How do we actually fix this whole mess?
Well, that's $1 million question, right?
Hmm.
Or should I say the $1.6 trillion question? And this whole debate gets really heated when you start talking about student loan forgiveness.
Yeah.
Like, should taxpayers really be on the hook for all that debt?
Right, because someone's got to pay for it, right?
Yeah.
What's this report say about the whole forgiveness thing? Is there even like a clear consensus on it?
You know, it's interesting. They don't actually pick a side,
Mm-hmm.
which I kind of appreciate, actually. They just lay out both sides really clearly.
Okay, well, lay it on me. What's the argument for forgiveness?
So the pro-forgiveness side basically says, look, education is a public good. Everyone benefits from a more educated population, right?
Yeah.
You've got a more skilled workforce. People are more likely to participate in democracy, all that good stuff.
Makes sense.
Plus, they argue that if people weren't like drowning in all these loan payments, they'd actually have more money to spend, which could boost the economy.
So it's like an investment, basically.
Exactly.
Yeah.
But of course, there's another side to this whole thing.
Yeah. I bet the anti-forgiveness folks have some strong opinions.
Oh, yeah, they definitely do. Their main argument boils down to fairness, basically. They're like, what about the people who didn't go to college? Maybe they couldn't afford it. Or the people who worked their way through school or already paid off their loans. Is it fair to make them pay for someone else's degree?
That's a good point, actually.
Right. And plus, they also argue that forgiveness doesn't even address the root of the problem. Like all that stuff we were talking about earlier about the skyrocketing cost of college.
Right. Yeah. Even if we hit the reset button on everyone's debt, what's to stop this from all happening again?
Exactly. And that's why this report doesn't just stop at the forgiveness debate. It actually talks about a bunch of other solutions, too. Some of them, honestly, might be more effective in the long run.
Okay, so what are we talking about here? What are the alternatives?
Well, one thing that's already in the works is expanding those income-driven repayment plans. Have you heard about this new SVE plan?
Vaguely, yeah.
Yeah.
It's supposed to make those monthly payments a little less painful, right?
Right. So basically, instead of having one set monthly payment, yours is tied to your income. So, you know, if you're in a lower paying job, which, let's be honest, a lot of people are right out of college, you're not getting slammed with these insane loan bills.
Right, okay.
The SEVP, specifically, caps your payments at 5% of what they call your discretionary income, which can make a huge difference.
So how much are we talking here? Like, what kind of impact are we looking at?
Well, this report actually gives an example. They say someone making $55,000 a year with $60,000 in debt could end up saving over $17,000 in interest compared to a standard repayment plan.
$17,000. Okay, yeah, that's not nothing. Okay,
Okay.
so that's the income-driven repayment thing. What else?
Well, another idea is to, actually fund higher education properly. Increase public funding so universities aren't so reliant on tuition dollars in the first place.
Okay, sure, that makes sense. But something tells me that's a lot easier said than done.
Oh, for sure. There are definitely some hurdles there. Like, where does all that extra money come from? And how do we actually make sure it gets used effectively? But ultimately, that's the argument this report makes, that investing in higher education is really investing in our future, both economically and socially.
Right, it's that whole public good thing again. Okay, so what else is on the table here?
Well, this one's a bit more controversial, but some folks are talking about reforming bankruptcy laws to make it easier to get rid of student loans that way.
Get rid of them completely, like
Right.
through bankruptcy.
Yep. Because right now, it is really difficult to discharge student loans through bankruptcy, which is part of the problem.
Okay.
But then again, this whole idea opens up a whole other can of worms. Like, some people worry about the potential for abuse and whether it would actually solve the bigger problems.
It's never simple, is it?
Never.
Yeah.
And then this last point the report makes is a big one. We need better oversight of these for-profit schools.
Oh, yeah, those have come up a few times. Didn't the report say something about for-profit colleges and like higher default rates or something?
It did. They said that by 2011, borrowers who went to for-profit schools were way more likely to default on their loans compared to students who went to, like a 4-year public or nonprofit school. And there's a lot of debate about why that is. Some for-profit schools have actually been accused of like predatory lending practices, like misleading students
Yeah.
about their job prospects and just basically leaving them with mountains of debt and no way to repay it.
Man, that's awful.
It's a mess.
So it's not even just about how much debt you have, it's also about where that debt comes from and whether your education is actually going to lead to a job that lets you, pay it all back.
Exactly. It's a whole tangled web.
Wow. Okay. So we covered a ton of ground here. We talked about why college costs so much, that whole debate around loan forgiveness, and then a bunch of other potential solutions that, aren't just about hitting a reset button on everyone's debt. What's the takeaway here? Like, what should people be thinking about after listening to all of this?
Honestly.
Hmm.
I think the big takeaway is that this isn't just some personal finance issue, you know? It's really about how we value education as a society, how we're funding it, and how we make sure everyone has a real shot at a decent future, with or without a college degree, honestly. And like we've been talking about, there's no easy answer here. It's complicated.
Yeah.
But the more we understand just how complicated it is, the better equipped we'll be to actually find some solutions.
I think that's a great place to wrap up, actually. This deep dive has been eye-opening, to say the least. And it's clear that we need to think way beyond just quick fixes and really take a hard look at the whole system. What about you? Where do you stand on all of this? Head over to our social media channels and let us know what you think. We want to hear from you. Until next time, happy diving.